Hi, and welcome to my Visually Impaired Life Part 2. This is going to be the breakdown video. Now, I've tried filming this a lot of times, so I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to try to keep it from the beginning to my MRI process, and then after that, I'll leave it to another video. Because I've been learning, there's a lot of information to throw into a little bit of time. So, going on. I grew up in the city my whole life, never lived in the countryside, which I do now. There's a reason for it, but I always living in the city meant, living with crime, drugs, shabby apartments. Sometimes we lived in okay places, but it was never enough to stay in one place for a long time. But the last apartment we lived in Manchester, we were there for five and a half years, at least 5 years, before we moved to the country. But we got fed up because there was a nice park across the street. Unfortunately, the apartment was on a third floor. The rent was amazingly expensive. With no utilities. It was, you're paying over $1,000 a month for no utility. It's for a tiny, tiny little apartment. That's pretty crazy. And it was on a hill, which in the winter you always have to move your cars and this and that. But long story short, we weren't happy there. The people would do so much drugs. Heroin was so bad that they was in the parking lot, they'd do it, and they actually tossed the syringes out the window into the woods. And the kids would literally find the syringes. We have to go out there and take the syringes and put them in soda bottles. And, it's just not what I wanted my kid to grow up with. So times had to change. So my wife and I decided, something's got to change, like I said, and she got an opportunity, and the opportunity was to go towards the country, like in 45 an hour away from where we were, and they were to let her apply at a company that her mother worked at, the greatest company in the world, Globe Manufacturing, which is now called Globe by MSA, and they're the leaders in the fire suit industry. Kind of throwing a plug out there, but anybody that ever moves to New Hampshire, if you're ever near that company, that's the company you want to apply for, because they treat all their employees like gold. Me, through this visual impairment process, they've done nothing but be by my side. They have not made me feel guilty. They have not, tried to deter me from anything. They just want me to get better, and emotionally, everything. Best company in the world. I love you guys, and I love all the employees there too. If you're watching this video, I miss all of you. So my wife got an opportunity, and they offered it to me too. They said, tell your daughter, my wife's mom, to apply, and we'll see if we can give them a job. Well, that was a Thursday. So my wife and I applied on a Thursday. By Friday, they asked us to come back, did an interview, and then they offered us a job position. But they wanted it for Monday, that following Monday. So we would have to start work fast. And we were like an hour away. And, we never drove. At the time, we didn't drive brand new cars. So we knew we had to get closer. So coincidentally, I'm like, well, let's start looking for apartments. So that Saturday, I'm online on Craigslist. And what do I come by? A house in Barnstead that just got posted. And I talked to the lady, and she was amazing. Met her and her husband, my wife and I, my stepson. Went there and met up with them, and they took us, they just loved us from the second they met us, and they took a chance, didn't do the credit check information, nothing. They're like, we want you to live here. This is going to be a good life change for you. Because we told them how the city was and the drugs, and we just wanted it better for the kid, and if we ever had another one. And so that's what happened. Saturday we got a house for less than what we were paying with utilities included, okay? And it was on 2.5 acres of land, and a good area too. Like, if I wanted to go outside and shoot a gun, I could go out and shoot targets take 3 steps out of my house if I wanted to. You know what I mean? That's how secluded it is to your neighbors. But my neighbor was the landlord, which was really cool too. So if we needed anything, they were very close. And we went. So we got the job. We got the house, but we had to stay with my in-laws for like a week or two, which they lived in Barnstead, so it was very close to our work. and that until the house was ready. And we did that, and then we were working at Globe, and everything was going good. We were making better money than we were. We had a stable job. We had benefits. Well, we were going to have benefits, and then we were like, well, you know, we lived there, and it ended up being, you know, years we lived there, and our son kind of grew up in that house, and he did a lot better in schools. That was another problem we had in Manchester, the school district. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, I grew up and went to Manchester schools and everything, but the schools at the time weren't good for my child. They kept blaming my child, saying he was this and that. Come to find out, we moved here, and it's a 360 degrees. The kid goes from doing horrible at school to doing really good because teachers were able to deal with him. And he wasn't even a problem child. He was lashing out because there were certain teachers that he didn't get along with, and instead of trying to fix the problem, they were just making it worse and just making him feel like he was an issue and so forth. But that's a whole other thing. We come here, things are getting better, okay? And then my wife and I we're trying to have a baby for like 5 years. The 5th year after marriage, we kind of gave up, and it just happened that she got pregnant. So I'm on top of the world there, and we really wanted a daughter. So emotionally, I'm feeling good. I'm like, I got a good job, this and that. Now, this is the kicker. So she finds out she's pregnant, and just before she found out she was pregnant, from the minute I started working at Globe, I wanted to be a mechanic. So I went up to the boss, who would always be walking out in the driveway. Billy was one of the mechanics that worked in there, and he kept telling me, if you want to be a mechanic, you gotta put yourself out there. Don't be afraid, you know. And I said, all right. So I went out there, and I walked up to the owner, and I said, you see this face? I said, this whole face? That's the face of a mechanic. I go, you're gonna make me a mechanic one day. And he's like, oh, really? And he just laughed, and he kept walking. And I'm like, all right, I just wanted you to know that. And I walked off. 2.5 years later, working at Globe, I get pulled in the office and offered a job position as a mechanic. And everybody there said, you won't get that job. Nobody gets a mechanic job. Well, guess what? I wanted it that badly. And I would always throw in the owner's face. Remember this face? Remember this face? So he hired me, and he said, guess what? Because I remembered your face. I never forgot your face on the hiring. And I'm like, thank you. And then I became a mechanic, and I loved it. So I got a job promotion I wanted with better pay. And then everything was going so perfect. Then we ended up finding out she's pregnant. And then I ended up finding out it's a girl of all things. I already had 2 boys. I wanted a girl so bad. And I watched how my dad was. My sister, God rest her soul, she died really young. And I saw how my dad loved her so much, and how she loved him. And I wanted the same thing. You know, I wanted, my dad like spoiled my sister. And if I asked, like, say he would give my sister $50, and I'd say, Dad, can I have $10? He's like, get a job. Because I was the guy, European, okay? So, you know, it's just how it was. And I wanted the same thing. So I ended up finding out we're having a daughter. Like, I'll never forget going to the ultrasound, and the nurse doing the ultrasound, just in the process of doing it. And I'm watching the screen, and I see that it's a girl. I could see it was a girl. And I start flipping out. I stand up, and I'm like cheering. I'm like, Super Bowl time. And she's like, what are you freaking out about? I go, it's a girl. It's a girl. She goes, how do you know it's a girl? And I said, I could see it on the monitor. And she's like, you're right, it's a girl. And then I was just ecstatic. Things couldn't get any better. So things are going really, really good. I'm getting everything I want. I'm like, what else could happen? Well, come to find out, my buddy Billy, I've had time goes on. I'm in the mechanic's office, and I'm a full-fledged mechanic. My daughter, you know, is already born, and I'm veering off, sorry, because I'm trying not to lose any information. So I apologize when this happens, and eventually with editing, I'm going to get rid of all this crap. So he starts talking to me about houses, how he got one over the phone. He got approved for a loan over the phone. I'm like, really? You could do that nowadays? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, because I didn't think my credit was like super great. And I'm like, I'm going to go to the bank and this and that. And so I'm like, oh, what could happen? You know, they say no. So I called, and I got the approval. So we got $200,000 for a house, up to $200,000. So we went and looked. Ended up finding a house my wife wanted, like the house she really wanted. In fact, it was a house that was on the market. In 24 hours, it was off the market. She wanted it. That was the house she wanted to see. But we never went to see it because it was off the market. We went and looked at about 4 houses, and we didn't like any of them. One day she meets up with us at a house, and she says, well, that house that you keep talking about, she goes, that you keep mentioning to me, and she goes, it's back on the market, and she happened to be the real estate agent for that house. So my wife looked at it. It took 5 minutes, and we knew we wanted it. 5 minutes, we're like, that's the house. And my wife and I threw an offer. It was accepted. We went through the very stressful time of purchasing the house. Now, this is where I'm going to stop the story because I want you to know. This is where fear kicks in, okay? Stress and fear will take you over. I want you to know that if you start going visually impaired, the fear of dying, the fear of cancer, the fear of tumors, the fear of so many horrible things is going to be going through your mind, and you've got to learn to just let it go, okay? I'm not saying let it happen. Don't believe it. Just believe it's not happening. Just don't let the fear take you over, because it's just going to make your life even harder. So we get the house, we get the approval, and I still have 20/20 vision. I'm happy. My wife's happy. We do what they tell us. But every time you get anybody that's ever purchased a house will know this. They'll tell you you're approved, yes, but that's not a real approval. It's a fake approval. It's them looking at a thing saying, yeah, you meet the criteria. So the criteria, and then you got to do this. They give me a whole list of things I had to do. Like if there's something that I had to pay, a debt, I had to pay it. And like I had a debt of $1.80. No joke, $1.80. And it was 11 years ago from a hospital. And I was like, I didn't even know it existed. They sent me a letter on a Friday, an email, saying, you have till tomorrow to give us the invoice number for this bill, or we can't approve your loan. And I said, what? It was $1.80. You're not going to approve me for $1.80? Flipping out. I was so stressed that week because I had to wait Saturday, Sunday, and Monday in order to get in touch with anybody to question this. And that's 3 days after 1 day and no go. So I thought, and you got to remember, you got to dish out your own money. When you're in the purchase of a house, you got to dish out your own money. And a lot of it. I mean, I had already invested $2,000 at this point for inspections, this and that. And so I'm going through that stress. So in the process of the stress, I start seeing a gray speck in my vision. And, oh, my dog's there. No, Lakota, calm down. Calm down. It's okay. Calm down. I have snow falling off the roof of my house. I live in New Hampshire. Okay, moving on to the story. So, I start seeing a gray speck in my vision. And, look, hold on one second. Lakota, lay down, please. Come on. Come on. Lay down. It's okay. So sorry. I'm not going to be able to edit this out. And I've already taken this take like 500 times. So I'm going through with it. I hope you bear with me. So now I'm going through the stress. I'm thinking the speck in my eye is from stress. That's what I'm thinking. I talked to like my mother-in-law. I talked to everybody. And I'm like, this is, got to be from stress. They're like, maybe it's just stress. And then I go and I call the eye doctor and I make an appointment for the next day. By the next day, it was like a crescent moon. I go to the regular eye doctor. She can't see anything wrong with my eye, so she sends me to a specialist. Now I'm getting really scared. Now, this is the other thing. Now, I'm trying to get into so much detail. So when I go to the regular eye doctor, she didn't see anything wrong, but she knows that I'm seeing something. So she even gets to the point where she has me doing all these tests. I leave, and she calls me and says, I don't normally do this, but can you please come back to my office so I could take some more tests? And I just thought that was really weird. So that made me nervous all by itself. Then the next day I had to see a specialist. I had to go with a doctor that wasn't part of my primary because my primary, the person that would get on mine was not available. So I went with this other doctor, which was 45 minutes away. And I by the time I went there, I mean, I even had more vision loss, and she couldn't figure it out. And then I'm getting really scared because she's like, I can't even see what's wrong with your eye, so I need to call my buddy. So she had another emergency guy come in. He comes in with like his ER gear and all this stuff, and I guess he came from the hospital, and he took a couple pictures of my eye, and he says, "Oh, I see what it is. It's a swollen optic nerve, I think." And then I'm like relieved. I'm like, "Oh, okay, I thought you were gonna say it was like something else." And they're like, "That's not necessarily a good thing, you know." That's what the guy told me. He's like, "Don't get all up and up for it, you know, don't you know?" Because I'm over there panicking, and he's just like not helping me, making me panic more. And now I get hiccups again. I think that's gonna be a thing. I'm gonna have hiccups every video. So she tells me that I need to go get an MRI. So now I'm freaking out because I'm like, now I gotta go get my brain checked. And I never had an MRI, so I was really scared about what an MRI process was. And I had ignorance, you know, so I had no clue. So I go 3 days later, they make my appointment. I go to this doctor's office, and by this time, it's like half my eye is gone. It just can't see anything. It's just pixels, gray. Well, I didn't see the pixels right away. I'm gonna note. It was just like a gray to me. And I went to the appointment, and I'm going to tell you this is how an MRI process works. So you walk in there, they take your information, you fill out your name, social, all that stuff, and then they ask you questions. So are you claustrophobic? Do you work with metal parts? Do you work with knives, this and that? And I told them I'm a mechanic. So they're like, okay, well, you need to get an x-ray as well. I'm like, oh, I can't afford this stuff. They're like, you have to do it or you can't do the MRI, because if you have metal in your eye, you're going to be even worse shape. So we have to make sure there's no metal in your eye. Well, they do the x-ray. It took like 2 minutes, no joke. They stood me up there, took an x-ray, and then they said, no, we don't see anything in there. You're good for the MRI. So then they ask you the questions again. Are you claustrophobic? I said, I'm only claustrophobic when I'm around a lot of people. Like, I can't go to Disney World and be bumping people's arms. I don't like that stuff at all. So they said, well, we're going to put a blindfold on you, and we're going to lay you on this contraption. I walk in this big room, and there's a big tube machine with a hole in it, you know, and I see the bed that goes in it. And I'm really nervous, but it was actually a really simple, easy process. I just want you to know. So I'm pumping with fear, but then I lay on there. They stick an IV in my hand, which I'm not afraid of needles. If you're afraid of needles, I'm sorry. But as long as you don't think about the needle, it's like a millisecond of your time, and they never bothered me much. But so they had to pump this fluid in me. It's like an incandescent fluid, so they could see the brain functions while they were doing the MRI. And I lay on this bed. They strap you in. It is kind of like, because you can't move your head, so it is a little freaky. But as long as you just let that go, you just lay there. They listen to music. They put headphones on you, blindfold. You don't need the blindfold. That's just what they offered me, and I took it. But I'm glad I did, because it was actually, as long as you just keep your eyes closed and you just hear the machine going, it shakes the whole bed. It was like being in a massage table. Literally, it was just vibrating. But it was loud. It lasted like 20, 25 minutes. And then it was done, and they sent me home. Now, I had to wait. Now I'm worrying, because now my eyes getting even more covered. So the fear in my head is, I got brain tumor, I'm dying of cancer, something's wrong with me, maybe I'm having a stroke. I was thinking stroke, big time. I was checking my smile every day in the mirror. I'm like, did I have a stroke? Am I having a stroke? Because I was going through so much stress. All I could think of was stress. And in the process, I'm trying to call doctors to get a regular doctor's visit, this and that. And so I get the phone call 3 days later for the MRI, and it was the doctor specialist I saw on that Saturday, and she gave me the scariest call in my life. So, and this is going to happen. This is where the fear, real fear, kicks in for you, okay? Is when you get the phone call that they see something in your MRI. Now, I don't know what it is, but they like to throw multiple sclerosis at eye conditions. I even asked the mass eye and ear doctors why this is, and they said because there's a lot of eye conditions that are not treatable, and he told me that multiple sclerosis is treatable. How much that's true, I don't really know, but that was the answer I was given. But anyway, Moving back again, I get the call and she says, well, I gotta tell you some news. She goes, we found lesions on your brain and a cyst in your brain. And I'm freaking out. I said, what? You found what in my brain? I go, a cyst? I have a cyst in my brain. And when I hear the word cyst, I'm thinking like cyst, like big like golf ball or something, and could be bad, you know? And she said, no, well, that's not what we're worried about right now. She says to me, she goes, the lesions are what we're worried about. She goes, the cyst isn't a part of your brain that's got nothing to do with your eyes. She goes, that's a whole other issue that we'll worry about down the road. And I'm like, excuse you? So now I got two things wrong with me that I have to worry about now? Like you're not making me feel good. So I say to the lady, I said, am I dying? And she's like, no. She's like, I'm not saying you're not dying. She's like, I can't tell you anything. She's like, you got brain lesions and those are concerning us. So you need to get an emergency lower lumbar puncture, spinal tap. And I'm like, she goes, I'm going to schedule it tonight and you're going to have it hopefully by tomorrow. I'm flipping out now. I'm like, I need it that fast. Like this is an emergency, that much of an emergency. She's like, yes, you need it that fast. And then I hang up with her, and she wasn't consoling me. She's like, I don't know what to tell you, and this and that. We'll be in touch. And I call him the next morning because I'm like, you know what? I haven't even seen my primary yet. I already made an appointment for my primary. I'm gonna go see him, and I'm gonna get a second opinion. I tell this to the lady at the front desk there on the phone. I hang up with her. 10 minutes later, I get a phone call from that specialist. Oh, Vinny, don't worry, Vinny, don't worry. We still want to see you. Go. She goes, there's no need for the lower lumbar puncture anymore. She goes, in fact, I have a radiologist friend, and he looked at it, and he said that they couldn't find anything, no lesions in there. You do have a cyst. She goes, but the cyst shows that you probably had it since you were a baby, and it's small. She goes, I would not worry. She's like, but I want to see you on Friday, and we're going to dilate both your eyes, so make sure someone drives you. And I thought this was weird. She kept stressing. She's like, you have to bring somebody with you. And I'm like, okay. She's like, just don't drive. Promise me you're not going to drive. You're going to bring someone with you. I said, all right. And then, which was weird because I've had my eyes dilated multiple times now, and I was able to drive with sunglasses. And we get there on that Friday. I bring my mother with me, and they pull me. I'm sitting in the waiting room, and I see that doctor. I say, hey, doctor, which I don't want to give names, but. And she turns around, she looks at me, and she just looks at me funny, and doesn't even say hi or nothing, just turns around, keeps walking. And I was just like, okay, now I'm really nervous. And then they pull me in, and she said, well, the doctor's going to see you. And it was a different doctor. So I'm sitting in there, and this doctor comes in, and he introduces himself, and then he says, all right, sit down, and he asks me a couple questions, like, hi, and then he takes the little flashlight thing, looks in one eye, looks in the other, says a note to the assistant to type in the computer, and he walks out of the room. He says, tell him to go in the waiting room, and I'll call him back in when I'm ready for him. And I knew something was wrong, like immediately. So he told her to give me a test. So they send me to another room. Oh, and he told me, you need to bring, he goes, did you bring somebody with you? I said, yes. Like we asked. I said, yes. And he goes, I need you to bring that person in with you because I have something to talk to you about, and you might not get all the information that I'm going to give you. It's good to have a second person to hear so that you get all the info. And I said, okay. And then now I'm freaking out. I'm like, am I dying? And he said, don't assume things right away. Just let me talk to you and a person. So he sends me for a peripheral test, and which they charge me for, by the way. They put me in the peripheral test for 30 seconds out of like a whole minute and something peripheral test. And he said, oh, the girl comes and says, no, he doesn't need it. She goes, well, I'm not even done the process. And she's like, the doctor's ready for him now. So it was just a fake waiting game, fake appointment and all. And so I get my mother, I get in there, and I sit down, and he has this assistant, and him sit down, and he shuts the door, and he says, we made this appointment to tell you something, that you have optic neuritis. And I'm like, yeah, well, the guy said that. And he's like, yes, but you have optic neuritis due to multiple sclerosis. Now I'm thinking I'm going to die. I start bawling because all I'm thinking about is my wife, my kids. I'm like, I got a house, I have a daughter, I have this and that, and I'm not going to watch my daughter walk down the aisle, get married. I'm not going to get to live in this beautiful house where we just bought, and I'm leaving my wife with all this debt and my kids without a dad. And I just, it's all I can think about. To the point it like makes me emotional because it's a really traumatic part of my life. That's why I don't like talking about it, but I'm sacrificing for you guys. But this guy tells me this horrible info. And it was a diagnosis. It wasn't a, oh, maybe you have it. I've seen this a lot of times, and this is multiple sclerosis. And my mom said, well, how do you know? And he said, because he's got a lot of lesions, and he has a cyst. And the cyst, not really worried about now, but the lesions show that he has multiple sclerosis. I've seen this a lot of times, hundreds of times. He was a neuro-ophthalmologist, by the way. And my mom goes, how many? And he said, about 7. About 7 lesions. And I'm thinking, dread. My whole world ended right then and there. That was it for me. And my head's down. He says, you need to go to mayoclinic.com and learn the information. We're going to set you up with a neurologist, and I'm going to send you for emergency treatments, for IV treatments, for steroids, and then we're going to put you on prednisone to get the inflammation down. And he said, you should have vision back within 6 months. And he said, it might not be 100% back, but it's going to come back. So, I mean, that was good news, but I was thinking life, death, ignorance. I'm not, just letting you know, I'm not ignorant now to multiple sclerosis like I was at that moment. I actually got to the point where after this appointment happened, I was doing the IV treatments, which I would have to drive 45 minutes away and go do these treatments. And then they would inject me for 3 hours. So you go in a room and they watch TV and they inject you through IV with steroids. And it literally took about 3 hours, usually 3.5 hours at the most. And then they send you packing. And I would go right to work right from there. And I would have all these crazy side effects. I was like, my knees locked up going upstairs. Every knuckle, every joint in my body hurt. I would look at lights and I'd see glares, like hazes coming off of them. I was crying over stupid little things, and I'm not a big crier, okay? Like, yes, I was crying a lot through this process, but I think anybody who was thinking they were dying would cry, okay? Especially when they have loved ones in the mix. And I literally got to the point where I believed this doctor so much because I was having symptoms of multiple sclerosis. I mean, what do you do when you find out? You go home and you go on Google, you go on YouTube, and you look up people that have multiple sclerosis, and you look up the symptoms of multiple sclerosis. And I was like, I have all these symptoms. I'm like, taste buds changed. My wife always yells at me, you don't taste the same thing I taste. Well, and this and that over the years, and things I never really thought about, but I started believing I had multiple sclerosis. So now I'm going to my primary doctor in the process because I had already made an appointment, because nobody's even taking my blood work at this point, or even my blood pressure. And I go to him and he looks at the MRI and he says, Vinny, the doctor told you had multiple sclerosis? And I said, yeah. And he goes, I'm not a specialist on this, but I don't see MS. He's like, I don't see lesions on your brain either. He's like, I see a cyst. He goes, you probably had this since you were a baby. And I've had like 3 doctors say that to me. You probably had it forever. They see them all the time. And then, not to even worry about it, just keep an eye on it over the years. So I'm starting to feel like relieved that he said that. And he's actually started laughing at me, my doctor. But remember, he's my primary. I've had him for years. And he's like, Vinny, he's like, you got an eye issue, but whatever this is, it's not going to kill you. He's like, you're not dying. I can assure you, this is not killing you. And that kind of made me feel a bit better. He said, I'm going to send you to my neurologist, which is, my primary neurologist. I canceled their neurologist. Now, that's another thing I got to note. When you go to see certain doctors, like the first hospital was the Elliott Hospital, they told me life or death on everything. They weren't saying like you're going to die, but they were making it seem like it. Like, you need this right away, that right away. We got to get you this specialist, that specialist, this specialist. And I had to keep canceling things because I couldn't understand, and then I go see my primary and he's like, no, we're just going to get you to a neurologist. And I get in there like 3 months. And that's another thing you got to know is that neurologists, specialists will take a long time. So word of advice, call every gunning day. Okay, call every single day if you have to. If you, they will try to get you. They'll be like, "We'll see you in 6 months." No, and you're gonna want to wait the 6 months because you're gonna be like, "I don't want to even think of this stress. I want to kind of forget about it." But when you go on visually impaired, you have no choice. You see it every day. But call every day and say, "Can I get an earlier appointment? Is there a cancellation? Can I get an earlier appointment?" Because I'm telling you, they will just ride along the whole ride and keep you out of the loop. Well, I gotta find my drink, my straw. And so I ended up waiting 3 months, and that was like an early visit, by the way, for a neurologist. And I'm like, at this point, I hadn't gone back to the eye doctor because I was kind of afraid of that eye doctor after telling me I had multiple sclerosis, this deadly, life-changing disease, and I had lesions, to finding out I didn't have lesions. Well, at least my primary didn't think so, and not to really dwell on that because he didn't think that's what it was. I went to the neurologist, and she said the same thing. She goes, "I don't know why this doctor would say this to you, but I don't see any lesions either." She goes, "I see like 3 anomalies that could be lesions." She goes, "But they don't even look like lesions." She says, "I'm just going to say age spots because you're in your mid-30s. She goes, "But I don't think you have multiple sclerosis." She even tested me. She did all the physical tests, and we did all the blood work. I got so many needles. I remember going and getting 20 vials of blood. Like, when I went down to get the blood results, the ladies were like, "I've never taken this much blood from somebody." So, you know, this was a good neurologist. She wanted to get down to the nit and grit. But I in the process, I'm finding out. So what's my lesson to you is that for right now is you're going to get the fear of God put into you guys, okay? Don't accept it, okay? Do not. Just know, though, no matter what happens to you, as long as you're breathing and you're waking up every morning, life's still going on. You will get to the process and you will figure it out. But stressing over it isn't making your process any easier on yourself. You need to give yourself time to accept, and you need to not dwell on it. I mean, and I know how hard it is not to dwell because it was so hard for me not to. I was miserable. I was depressed every day when this was happening. But if I could turn back time, I would totally go through the process totally different. And that's why I'm making these videos, so that I can turn back time with you, okay? And you can know that you're probably going to find out it's something big to nothing, okay? Because not all doctors know everything. I've seen a lot of doctors, and it's been a year and a half, or a little under a year and a half, and I still haven't had a diagnosis yet. So, yeah, I went to that neurologist, and she said that she didn't see the MRI brain lesions that doctor did. So I'm going to leave it at this point and not go any further, but I hope this video has given you information, and I hope it does help you. And and by the way, I talked about financials. So the MRI in the end with insurance, I had pretty decent insurance.